there's a very vibrant, dynamically evolving market of Bitcoin applications that are mutating faster than we can speak or describe them in every jurisdiction. It's like a petri dish of life. Like, for example, there's a use case of Bitcoin, which is I'm going to use it and I'm going to use a hardware wallet and place a certain amount in cold storage. Okay, there's a lot of people that have mastered that, and that's a good thing. But even the people that have mastered that would admit that there's another use case, which is the Chivo application in El Salvador, right? That is a downloadable, wallet that's moving around Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, and it's riskier, right? You've got KYC involved, so it's not as private, and it's riskier because you could lose your mobile phone, but it's faster. And then you've got a third application, which is like Strike, or a third party Lightning wallet, which is, and there are some, Moon or Breeze, they're not KYC, they're non-custodial. And that's a third application. And did that benefit from the existence of the Chivo wallet? Sure it does. The demand for those wallets will go up because the Chivo wallet goes up. And then in the defense of the president of El Salvador, kind of hard to give $30 worth of Bitcoin to every citizen unless you do some kind of KYC citizenship check, right? Otherwise, one citizen claims it 10 million times, right? So, and everybody else gets nothing. So there's an application that's different there. Now, there's a fourth application, right? What if you're a company? A corporation is going to take the view that they don't want to have a single individual. They'll want to have a multi-signature relationship when it comes to custody of their Bitcoin, and they'll have more sophisticated custodial rules. A government would be even different. If you were a citizen of a city, and the city put $1 billion of Bitcoin on its balance sheet, would you want the mayor to carry the keys around? And by the way, if you were the mayor, would you want people to know that you actually have the keys? I mean, wouldn't you be concerned about getting kidnapped and having your fingers ripped off one at a time, or having a family member kidnapped? So in that particular case, they're going to actually be interested in a different thing, right? So that's another application, and that's multi-signature application. But then who should be signing it? And in some cases, it's not even multi-sig across people. It's multi-sig across organizations, like 3 agencies or 3 corporations or auditors might need to have some involvement. So I'm not threatened by the entry of banks. I think that they're all just different manifestations of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is property, and you can build things on top of it. One thing you can build on top of it is a checking account and a savings account. We need Square and PayPal to offer their mobile apps on top of it. But we also could use an ETF. For example, there are organizations in our society. I mean, if I'm an institutional investor, I have $2 billion. It took me 30 years to raise the $2 billion. The money's raised from firemen's pension funds and unions and other organizations and foundations, the Rockefeller Foundation. And they gave me the money, and they gave it to me 15 years ago. And I have the ability to buy securities with it, but I don't have the ability to buy property with it, or I don't have the ability to buy Bitcoin with it. And if I wanted to buy Bitcoin, I would have to convince a board of directors with 28 people on it that meets once every 6 months. And then I would have to convince my outside auditors, and then I'd have to change the law in the state of Utah. And then I would have to go back to all of my limited partners and explain to them. And then I would have to actually educate 252 people and my outside auditors. And after I did that, I go through a 1-year process to establish my relationship with the Bitcoin exchange. Then I have to figure out how we're going to custody it. And that would take me about 5 years, and I'd probably fail 99% of the time. or I could punch a button and buy $27 million worth of the Bitcoin ETF, and I could do that in 30 seconds. Now, is there a role for an ETF? Sure, there is for that. You can say, well, the person that invests the fireman's fund ought to actually hold their own keys. Well, if you were a retired fireman and you had your entire pension, and someone said, there's one dude we hired last week and he has $2 billion of your money and he's got the keys and he just disappeared, you might not take kindly to that, right? So it's not always the case that the right answer is, cold storage, hardware wallet, self-custody. It depends upon who you are. And we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I would say there's probably 1,000 different instantiations. In fact, more than that. For example, the ETF is a way to get Bitcoin exposure. Now you could say, is that as good as holding the Bitcoin? No. Is it better than holding an ETF that's invested in negative yielding sovereign debt of Italy? Yes. My choice isn't the choice to own Bitcoin or own the ETF. My choice is to own the Italian sovereign debt ETF or own the Bitcoin ETF. That's my choice. So once you realize that, you realize that what we want traditional banks to offer certain types of Bitcoin accounts. We want the new mobile banks like Square and PayPal. You're going to have the Square, but you'll have Square that lets you hold Bitcoin and move it out of Square and move it on a cash tag, but they don't support Lightning yet. But at some point, Square Cash App will support Lightning. They'll be better. When PayPal supported Bitcoin, they didn't support Bitcoin withdrawals. They were worse. When they add Bitcoin withdrawals, they're better. When they add Lightning, they'll be better still, right? There's going to be non-custodial wallets. They're better, right? You're going to have layers of, but the guys in the hardware wallet business say non-custodial hot wallets on mobile phones aren't as good. So I'm going to stack up layers of Bitcoin, and I can name probably 20 off the top of my head. You can own a junk bond for MicroStrategy that yields 6 and 8% interest. Is that as good as owning Bitcoin? No. Is it better than owning a junk bond that isn't backed by Bitcoin that yields 2% interest? Yeah. You see, so you can own a convert in MicroStrategy and that yields like whatever, 0.5% interest, but it's backed by Bitcoin. If Bitcoin goes up by a factor of 10, your bond's going to go up by a factor of 5. Is that better than owning Bitcoin? No. Is it better than owning another convertible bond that's backed by some other, the space tourism or something? Maybe, right? Depends. So what you have is a universe of people that can own certain types of securities and certain types of properties by charter. And then you have a universe of securities and properties of Bitcoin that are being offered as the banking sector and the financial sector evolves. When the sector evolves, when we have a Bitcoin ETF in the US, billions and billions of dollars will flow into Bitcoin that under no circumstances would have found their way into Bitcoin otherwise. I know people. I know a 70-year-old guy. He's got a phone in his hand. He might have something like a PayPal on it. He can do this. He can go $2,000 Bitcoin. That's what he can do. If you go back to him and say, I need you to listen to 500 hours of videos and learn to go through a 97-step process and buy these 14 things, it's like, I can't do it. Right? So it's literally like, I cannot do it. In theory, it would be nice if we all had our own gun and our own shack on our own ranch with our own livestock, and we could grow our own food and we could ride our horses and we could go off the grid, et cetera. But it gets real when you got to perform your own appendectomy. And at that point, you start thinking maybe this living off the grid thing wasn't, such a good idea. Right. And so I think with Bitcoin, you've got different services in every country, in every market, and what's legally possible and possible from a regulatory point of view, and what's technically possible and what's practical is changing all the time. I happen to think that the best outcome is the greatest diversity of market opportunities, because I'm not smart enough to know the one right answer. And I do think that if you look at consumers, there's a different solution for different types of individuals. If you look at my 83-year-old dad, right? He's not going to buy anything with a mobile app, but he might sell his stock portfolio and put it into a Bitcoin ETF if he could do that with, right? So individuals, they have their own needs. Corporations are different. Some companies can buy Bitcoin. Some companies, for example, would want a treasury service from Fidelity that gave them 3% yield where they could just buy $10 million worth of it on a phone call, and they don't want to custody it. And right now their choice is hold cash or tell JP Morgan or Bank of America or Citigroup to put it in. The treasurers, they just sweep billions of dollars into short dated sovereign debt portfolios. Buy me $157 million worth of 90-day government debt. Thank you, click. Right? They need something like a treasury type service backed by Bitcoin. If you go to institutions, every institution's got a different charter. Some people by law, they can do convertible debt arbitrage. If you give them a convertible debt instrument, they can buy it. If you don't, they can't. It's not really an issue of do they want to? They can't. The guy that's sitting with you can talk with you for 5 minutes, punch a button and buy $500 million worth of the security. And you could talk to him for 10,000 hours and he can't buy the underlying Bitcoin and take personal custody of it. Just can't. So all those institutions are different. And then stuff gets really real when you get to municipal, state, and federal governments. Under what circumstances do you want, what if Jerome Powell said tomorrow, we've decided to buy $100 billion of Bitcoin? How do you feel about that? And then how would you like him to do that? How should he go about that? You want Jerome Powell to walk around with the keys? Like, what, you want the 12 members of the Federal Reserve Board? I mean, who do you really trust? What if we elect a new president and the old one just won't give up the money? Like what if my family just keeps the 100 billion? So when you get into the political domain, now it's different. So I tend to think there's a place for all those things, and there's some that will be more successful than others. And there's, some Bitcoin banks will fail, right? Some Bitcoin exchanges are crooked. Sometimes they have security issues. Sometimes somebody steals all the Bitcoin, right? It's happened. It will happen again, right? The market needs to squeeze out the weak offerings. Even hardware wallets, there are some that are better than others, right? Software wallets, some are better than others. Non-custodial, custodial. They're not all equal. They're not all perfect, right? So I think that the competition should continue. I think the beauty of the open network is the protocols are out there. When Apple Computer decides to build their own Apple Pay Bitcoin offering, they have access to the protocols. Will they do better than Square? Will they do better than PayPal? Will they do better than Google? I don't know. Here's what I know. They should be punished if they don't, right? The money, the capital should go away from the people that do a poor job to the people that do the best job. Who gets to make the decision? The people with the capital should make the decision. I shouldn't be called. If I tweet at you, take all your money and put it in this software wallet, you would think it's a little bit offensive. So let the people with the money make the decision and give them an entire universe of options. Some are going to make a mistake. Some are going to lose their keys. Some are going to lose their phone. Some exchanges are going to get hacked, right? It's like, that's life in the universe. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. Some stuff kills us. That still makes us stronger. The part of the herd that doesn't die is the stronger part of the herd. And that's Darwinian, natural selection. All the alternatives are less desirable, in my opinion.